Well, hey there and hello, and welcome to the attic of the dollhouse for another reading from A Grimm's Complete or Fairy Tales. That's right. And hey, for those of you that ain't joined us before, we like to set the mood straight before we get into our Grimm's Complete Fairy Tales there. So we get the lights out and get that little fire crackling that have been going. And we play us a little Suzuki D harp. That's right. Let's see if I mess this up today. It's been a minute here. That was a little short, so all right. I tried to record this Grimm's Fairy Tale some time ago. But you know what happened? I got to like the last page and the software died on me. So let's try it again. Now this one's a little bit longer, maybe 25 minutes or so. We've gone by estimates there. So get you a drink, maybe a little something to snack on, perhaps. But you just rest your weary ankles while I read you the two travelers. That's right. Okay, you ready? The two travelers. A shoemaker and a tailor once met with each other in their travels. The tailor was a handsome little fellow who was always merry and full of enjoyment. And he saw the shoemaker coming toward him from the other side, and as he observed his bag, what kind of a trade he plied, he sang a little mocking song to him. Sew me a seam and draw me a thread to spread it over with pitch. Knock the nail on the head. The shoemaker, however, could not endure the joke. He pulled a face as if he had drunk vinegar, and made a gesture as if he were about to seize the tailor by the throat. But the little fellow began to laugh, reached him his bottle, and said, "No harm was meant. Take a drink and swallow thy anger." And the shoemaker took a very hearty drink, and the storm on his face began to clear away. He gave the bottle back to the tailor and said, "I spoke civilly to thee. One speaks well after much drinking, but not after much thirst. Shall we travel together?" "All right," answered the tailor, "if only it suits thee to go into a big town where there's no lack of work." "Well, that is just where I want to go," answered the shoemaker. "In a small nest there's nothing to earn, and in the country people like to go barefoot." They traveled therefore onward together, and always set one foot before the other, like a weasel in the snow. Both of them had time enough, but little to bite and to break, and when they reached the town they went about and paid their respects to the tradesmen. And because the tailor looked so lively and merry, and had such pretty red cheeks, everyone gave him work willingly. And when luck was good, the master's daughters gave him a kiss beneath the porch as well. When he again fell in with the shoemaker, the tailor had always the most in his bundle. And the ill-tempered shoemaker made a wry face, and thought, the greater the rascal, the more the luck. But the tailor began to laugh and to sing, and shared all he got with his comrade. If a couple of pence jingled in his pockets, he ordered good cheer, and thumped the table in his joy till the glasses danced, and was lightly come, lightly go with him. And when they had traveled for some time, they came to a great forest, through which passed the road to the capital. And 2 footpaths, however, led through it, one of which was 7 days' journey, and the other only 2. But neither travelers knew which way was the short one. And they seated themselves beneath an oak tree, and took counsel together how they should forecast, and for many days they should provide themselves with bread. The shoemaker said, "One must look before one leaps, and I will take with me bread for a week." "What?" said the tailor. "Drag bread 7 days on one's back like a beast of burden, and not be able to look about? I shall trust God and not trouble myself about anything. The money I have in my pocket is good in summer as in winter, but in hot weather bread gets dry and moldy into the bargain. Even my coat does not go as far as it might. And besides, why should we not find the right way? Bread for 2 days, and that's enough." Each therefore brought his own bread, and then they tried their luck in the forest. It was as quiet as a church. No wind stirred, no brook murmured, no bird sang, and through the thickly leaved branches no sunbeam forced its way. The shoemaker spoke never a word, and the heavy bread weighed down his back until the perspiration streamed down his cross and gloomy face. The tailor, however, was quite merry, and he jumped about, whistled on a leaf, or sang a song, and thought to himself, "God in heaven must be pleased to see me so happy." This lasted 2 days, but on the 3rd the forest would not come to an end, and the tailor had eaten up all his bread. So after all his heart sank down a yard deeper. In the meantime he did not lose courage, but relied on God and his luck. On the 3rd day he laid down in the evening hungry under a tree, and rose again next morning hungry still. So also passed the 4th day, and when the shoemaker seated himself on a fallen tree and devoured his dinner, the tailor was only a looker on. If he begged for a little piece of bread, the other laughed mockingly, and said, "Thou hast always been so merry. Now thou canst try for once what is to be sad." The birds which sing too early in the morning are struck by the hawk in the evening. In short, he was pitiless. But on the 5th morning the poor tailor could no longer stand up, and was hardly able to utter a word for weakness. His cheeks were white and his eyes red, and then the shoemaker said to him, "I will give thee a bit of bread today, but in return for it I will put out thy right eye." The unhappy tailor, who still wished to save his life, could not do it in any other way, and he wept once more with both eyes, and then he held them out, and the shoemaker, who had a heart of stone, put out his right eye with a sharp knife. The tailor remembered what his mother had formerly said to him when he had been eating secretly in the pantry. "Eat what one can, and suffer what one must." And when he had consumed his dearly bought bread, he got on his legs again, forgot his misery, and comforted himself with the thought that he could always see enough with one eye. But on the 6th day, hunger made itself felt again, and gnawed him almost to the heart. In the evening he fell down by a tree, and on the 7th morning he could not raise himself for faintness, and death was close at hand. Then said the shoemaker, "I will show you mercy, and give thee bread once more, but thou shalt not have it for nothing. I shall put out the other eye for it." And now the tailor felt how thoughtless his life had been, prayed to God for forgiveness, and said, "Do what thou wilt, I will bear what I must. But remember that our Lord God does not always look on passively, and that an hour will come when the evil deed which thou hast done to me, and which I have not deserved of thee, will be requited." When times were good with me, I shared what I had with thee. And my trade is of that kind that each stitch must always be exact like the other. And if I no longer have my eyes and can sew no more, I must go a-begging. At any rate, do not leave me here alone when I am blind, or I shall die of hunger. The shoemaker, however, who had driven God out of his heart, took the knife and put out his left eye. Then he gave him a bit of bread to eat, and held out a stick to him, and drew him on behind him. When the sun went down, they got out of the forest, and before them in the open country stood the gallows. Thither the shoemaker guided the blind tailor, and then left him alone and went his way. Weariness, pain, and hunger made the wretched man fall asleep, and he slept the whole night. When day dawned, he awoke, but knew not where he lay, and two poor sinners were hanging on the gallows, and a crow sat on the head of each of them. Then one of the men who had been hanging began to speak, and said, Brother, art thou awake? Yes, I am awake, answered the second. Then I will tell thee something, said the first. The dew which this night has fallen down over us from the gallows gives every one who washes himself with his eyes again. If blind people but did know how many would regain their sight, who do not believe that to be possible. When the tailor heard that, he took his pocket handkerchief, pressed it to the grass, and when it was moist with dew, washed the sockets of his eyes with it. Immediately was fulfilled what the man on the gallows had said, and a couple of healthy new eyes filled his sockets. It was not long before the tailor saw the sun rise behind the mountains. In the plain before him lay a great royal city with its magnificent gates and 100 towers, and the golden balls and crosses which were on spires began to shine. He could distinguish every leaf on the trees, saw the birds which flew past, and the midges which danced in the air. He took a needle out of his pocket, and as he could thread it as well as he'd ever done. His heart danced with delight. He threw himself on his knees and thanked God for the mercy he had shown him, and said his morning prayer. He did not forget also to pray for the poor sinners who were hanging there swinging against each other in the wind like pendulums of a clock. Then he took his bundle on his back and soon forgot the pain of heart he had endured, and went on his way singing and a-whistling. The first thing he met was a brown fowl running about the fields at large, and he caught it by the mane and wanted to spring on it and ride it into town. The fowl, however, begged to be set free. I am still too young, it said. Even a light tailor such as thou art would break my back in two. Let me go till I have grown strong. A time may come, perhaps, when I may reward thee for it. Run off, said the tailor. I see thou art still a giddy thing. He gave it a touch with a switch over its back, whereupon it kicked up its hind legs for joy, leapt over hedges and ditches, and galloped away far out into the open country. But the little tailor hadn't eaten nothing since the day before. The sun, to be sure, fills my eyes, said he, but the bread does not fill my mouth. And the first thing that comes across me and is even half edible will have to suffer for it. In the meantime, a stork stepped solemnly over the meadows toward him. Halt, halt, cried the tailor, and seized him by the leg. I don't know if thou art good to eat or not, but my hunger leaves me no great choice. I must cut thy head off and roast thee. Don't do that, replied the stork. I am a sacred bird which brings mankind great profit, and no one does me an injury. Leave me my life, and I may go do thee good in some order way. Well, be off, cousin Longlegs, said the tailor. The stork rose up, let its long legs hang down, and flew gently away. what is to be the end of this? Said the tailor to himself at last. My hunger grows greater and greater, and my stomach more and more empty. Whatsoever comes in my way now is lost. At this moment he saw a couple of young ducks which were on a pond come swimming towards him. You come just the right moment, said the tailor, and laid hold of one of them as was about to wring its neck. On this, an old duck, which was hidden amongst the reeds, began to scream loudly, and swam to him with open beak, and begged him urgently to spare her dear children. Canst thou not imagine, said she, how thy mother would mourn if anyone wanted to carry thee off, and give thee a finishing stroke? Only be quiet, said the good-tempered tailor. Thou shalt keep thy children, and put thee prisoner back into the water. When he turned round, he was standing in front of an old tree which was partly hollow, and saw some wild bees flying in and out of it. There I shall at once find the reward of my good deed, said the tailor. The honey will refresh me. But the queen bee came out and threatened him, and said, If thou touchest my people, and destroyeth my nest, our sting shall pierce thy skin like 10,000 red-hot needles. But if thou wilt leave us in peace and go thy way, we will do thee a service for it another time. The little tailor saw that here was also nothing to be done. 3 dishes empty and nothing on the 4th is a bad dinner. He dragged himself, therefore, with his starved-out stomach into the town, and as it was just striking 12, all was ready cooked for him in the inn, and was able to sit down at once to dinner. When he was satisfied, he said, Now I will get to work. And he went round the town, saw the master, and soon found a good situation. As, however, he had thoroughly learned his trade, it was not long before he became famous, and everyone wanted to have his new coat made by the little tailor, whose importance increased daily. I can go no further in skill, said he, and yet things improve every day. At last the king appointed him court tailor. But how things do happen in the world! On the very same day his former comrade, the shoemaker, also became court shoemaker. More to healthy eyes his conscience troubled him. Before he takes his revenge on me, thought he to himself, I must dig a pit for him. He, however, who digs a pit for another falls into it himself. In the evening, when work was over and it had grown dusk, he stole to the king and said, Lord King, the tailor is an arrogant fellow, and has boasted that he will get the gold crown back again, which was lost in ancient times. Well, that would please me very much, said the king, and he caused the tailor to be brought before him next morning, and ordered him to get the crown back again, or to leave the town forever. Oh ho, thought the tailor, a rogue gives more than he has got. If the surly king wants me to do what can be done by no one, I will not wait till morning, but I will go out of town at once today. He packed up his bundle, therefore, but when he was without the gate, he could not help being sorry to give up his good fortune, and turn his back on the town in which all had gone so well with him. Well, he came to the pond where he had made the acquaintance of the ducks, and at that very moment the old one, whose young ones he had spared, was sitting there by the shore, pluming herself with her beak. And she knew him again instantly, and asked why he was hanging his head so. Thou wilt not be surprised when thou hearest what be all, said the duck. We can help thee. The crown fell into the water and lies down below at the bottom, and we will soon bring it up again for thee. In the meantime, just spread out thy handkerchief on the bank. She dived down with her 12 young ones, and in 5 minutes she was up again and sat with the crown resting on her wings. And the 12 young ones was swimming around about and had put their beaks under it, and were helping to carry it. They swam to shore and put the crown on the handkerchief, and no one can imagine how magnificent the crown was. When the sun shone on it, it gleamed like 100,000 carbuncles, and the tailor tied his handkerchief together by the 4 corners and carried it to the king, who was full of joy, and put a gold chain round the tailor's neck. When the shoemaker saw that one stroke had failed, he contrived a second, and went to the king and said, "Lord King, the tailor has become insolent again. He boasts that he will copy in wax the whole of the royal palace, with everything that pertains to it, loose or fast, inside and out." The king sent for the tailor and ordered him to copy and wax the whole of the royal palace, with everything that pertained to it, movable or immovable, within and without. And if he did not succeed in doing this, if so much as one nail on the wall were wanting, he should be imprisoned for his whole life underground. The tailor thought, "It gets worse and worse. No one can endure that," and threw his bundle on his back and went forth. And when he came to the hollow tree, he sat down and hung his head. And the bees came flying out, and the queen bee asked him if he had had a stiff neck since he held his head so awry. "Alas, no," answered the tailor. "Something quite different weighs me down." And he told her what the king had demanded of him. The bees began to buzz and hum amongst themselves, and the queen bee said, "Just go home again, but come back tomorrow or at this time, and bring a large sheet with thee, and then all will be well." So he turned his back again, but the bees flew to the royal palace and straight into it through the open windows, crept round about every corner, and inspected everything most carefully. Then they hurried back and modeled the palace in wax with such rapidity that anyone looking on would have thought it was growing before his eyes. By the evening all was ready, and when the tailor came the next morning, the whole of the splendid building was there, and not one nail in the wall or tile of the roof was wanting. And it was delicate withal, and white as snow, and smelt sweet as honey. And the tailor wrapped it carefully in the cloth and took it to the king, who could not admire it enough, placed it in his largest hall, and in return for it presented the tailor with a large stone house. The shoemaker, however, did not give up, but went for the 3rd time to the king and said, "Lord King, it has come to the tailor's ears that no water will spring up in the courtyard of the castle, and he has boasted that it shall rise up in the midst of the courtyard to a man's height and be clear as crystal." And then the king ordered the tailor to be brought before him and said, "If a stream of water does not rise in my courtyard by tomorrow, as thou hast promised, well, the executioner shall in that very place make thee shorter by head." The poor tailor did not take long to think about it, but hurried out the gate, and because this time it was a matter of life and death to him, tears rolled down his face. And while he was thus going forth, full of sorrow, the fowl which he had formerly given its liberty, and which had now become a beautiful chestnut horse, came leaping towards him. "The time has come," it said to the tailor, "when I can repay thee for thy good deed. I know already what is needed to thee, but thou shalt soon have help. Get on me, my back can carry 2 such as thou." The tailor's courage came back to him, and he jumped up in one bound, and the horse went full speed into town and right up to the courtyard of the castle. It galloped as quick as lightning thrice round it, and at the third time it fell violently down. At that same instant, however, there was a terrific clap of thunder, and a fragment of earth in the middle of the courtyard sprang like a cannonball into the air and over the castle, and directly after it a jet of water rose as high as a man on horseback, and the water was as pure as crystal, and the sunbeams began to dance with it. When the king saw that, he arose in amazement and went and embraced the tailor in sight of all men. But good fortune did not last long. The king had daughters in plenty, one prettier than the other, but he had no son. So the malicious shoemaker betook himself for a fourth time to the king and said, "Lord King, the tailor has not given up his arrogance. He has now boasted that if he liked, he could cause a son to be brought to the Lord King through the air." The king commanded the tailor to be summoned, and said, "If thou causest a son to be brought to me within 9 days, thou shalt have my eldest daughter to wife." "The reward is indeed great," thought the little tailor, "and one would willingly do something for it. But the cherries grow too high for me, and if I climb for them, the bough will break beneath me, and I shall fall." He went home, seated himself cross-legged on his work-table, and thought what was to be done. "It can't be managed," cried he at last. "I will go away. After all, I can't live in peace here." And he tied up his bundle and hurried away to the gate. And when he got to the meadow, he perceived his old friend the stork, who was walking backwards and forwards like a philosopher. And sometimes he stood still, took a frog into close consideration, and at length swallowed it down. The stork came to him and greeted him. "I see," he began, "that thou hast thy pack on thy back. Why art thou leaving the town?" The tailor told him what the king had required of him, and how he could not perform it, and lamented his misfortune. "Don't let thy hair grow gray about that," said the stork. "I will help thee out of thy difficulty. For a long time now I have carried the children in swaddling clothes into the town, so for once in a way I can fetch a little prince out of the well. Go home, be easy. In 9 days from this time repair to the royal palace, and there I will come." The little tailor went home, and at the appointed time was at the castle, and it was not long before the stork came flying thither and tapped at the window. The tailor opened it, and Cousin Longlegs came carefully in, and walked with solemn steps over the smooth marble pavement. He had, however, a baby in his beak that was as lovely as an angel, and stretched out in his little hands to the queen. The stork laid it in her lap and caressed it, and she caressed it rather and kissed it, and was beside herself with delight. Before the stork flew away, he took his traveling bag off his back and handed it over to the queen. In it there were little paper parcels with colored sweetmeats, and they were divided among the little princesses. The eldest, however, had none of them, but got to marry the tailor for a husband. "It seems to me," said he, "just as if I had won the highest prize. My mother was right after all, and she always said that whosoever trusts in God and only has good luck and can never fail." The shoemaker had to make the shoes in which the little tailor danced at the wedding festival, and after which he was commanded to quit the town forever. The road to the forest led him to the gallows. Worn out with anger, rage, and the heat of the day, he threw himself down. And when he had closed his eyes and was about to sleep, the 2 crows flew down from the heads of the men who were hanging there and pecked his eyes out. And in his madness he ran into the forest, and he must have died there of hunger, for no one has ever either seen him again or heard from him. And that has been The 2 Travelers from Grimm's Complete Fairy tales. That's right. Boy, that was a good one. But I tell you what, it must have failed originally for a reason. Because of the stork, I tell you. The storks was in a birthday read I did today. Synchronicity. That's right. A 1 and a 4 for 5. I can't believe it, folks. Synchronicity wherever you look. Can't believe it. You think I'm making that up? You can think all you want, but it's not the case. It's true there. Even though it's not a stork, it's a bird that looks like a stork in that birthday book there. In any event, hey, I got an affiliate link for your Grimm's Fairy Tales down in the description. So if you want to pick you up your own copy or support the channel by shopping through it, I greatly appreciate it. And you might greatly appreciate this book, A Grace in Your Bookshelf. That's right. But in any event, hey, that has been the reading for tonight. Or this morning, whichever time this finds you. So let's take us out here. All right, there. I hope you enjoyed yourself. I know I did. It was a complete fairy tale. So, kisses to your missus and a tip of my hat to your old cat. You come on back again now, you hear? You better. Hope you do. Take care of yourself now.